Hello and welcome to Inner Mother. In this 5-video series, we will be diving deep and also just skimming the surface where needed of practices, exercises, and just some time and space to yourself to really explore what it is that it feels like to be in your own skin. So often in our day-to-day lives, we find ourselves scattered or having to adhere to a to-do list or something like this. So this time is really for you. Each little practice pocket is for you to let go of anything else on either side of that time frame and just really spend some time with yourself in a good way, in a guided way, in a way that allows your body to have some freedom of expression, but also to have a container of guidance within which you can explore and taste and touch and feel different aspects of yourself, different ways that your body wants to move. And yeah, just getting a little bit more intimate with that. So why have I created this? I've created this because I know deeply and firsthand what it's like to try and maintain a sense of personhood, a sense of self throughout the journey of mothering. And I don't mean that in a way of a created identity, such as holding on to who you were before you were a mother, for example. Not at all. But I mean that this can be a way that we can explore who we are being in this moment. And who we are being is actually an extremely fluid and mutable and constantly evolving being. And so when we do the same things day after day, and we have our set routines, and our children sometimes have their set routines, and everything kind of goes in the same pattern day in, day out, we can get a little stuck. And this stuckness translates in both our mental, our emotional, our physical, our spiritual, and our whole energy body selves, or the layers of ourselves. And so doing something a little bit different sometimes serves to break that spell, to break that pattern that may have become too rigid, and to create openings for something new, for a new way of doing something that perhaps was not ideal before, or for a new way of looking at ourselves that perhaps had before become somewhat crystallized. And so really, when you dive into these practices, the key is to feel into where you find yourself in that moment and what it is that you need, and trust yourself to know this. And if you have no idea at all, just choose one randomly and see where it takes you. You'll pretty quickly probably start to find that it's a yes or a no. And as we refine this sense of navigation, of this yes and no, then the more we can be true to ourselves just a little bit more. And of course, in all of our lives, there are things that are somewhat inevitable, some things that we have to have in place or make sure that get done. But there are many other little pockets of time and space where we can play, where we can be a bit more curious about what it is that we actually want right now in this moment. Is this something that we think is good and therefore we're doing it? Or we think we should be doing this and that's why we're choosing to do it? Or is this something that truly nurtures our sense of self, nurtures our well-being, our health, our energy? So without further ado, I will give you a few little pointers on how I like to approach these practices myself. And then, of course, you have your own intuition to guide you as you move through them. So my main core assumption as I go into any practice is one of inviting a sense of curiosity within myself, of how does my body respond to this situation, to this movement, to this invitation? How does my being feel when I'm going through these motions or exploring this particular area, for example? And what that does, when I remind myself of this at the beginning of each practice, what this does is it serves as a little key, a little thread of openness to the experience. I haven't gone into it deciding that I like it or deciding that I won't like it. I've reserved that judgment, so to speak, and I go into it with the acknowledgement that my perception is, again, a dynamic living force. And so it is more of an exercise in moment by moment noticing, or moment by moment listening to myself, rather than, okay, now I'm going to notice, when do I feel good? When do I feel bad? It's more like an organic sea creature that has all of these nodes of sensing, and information is constantly flowing from the inside and the outside to these nodes, these sensitive antenna, so to speak. And actually this information processing is happening constantly, whether I'm aware of it or not. And all of these pieces of information are sending little signals to my system constantly, all the time, even when I'm asleep, for example. And this informs my body of what is going on around me, what is happening within me, when I'm hungry, what I should be eating, how I should be, moving, when I should be going to the toilet. We all know these more evident signals. And then there are more subtle signals that we don't need to pay attention to all the time, but interesting things happen when we do begin to pay attention. So signals like the temperature of the room around us, or the humidity in the space around us, the temperature of the air entering into the body compared to the temperature of the air moving out of the body. All of these little tiny pieces of information build our perception. And of course, perception is a very personal thing. As we know now, even colors that are presumed to look the same to everyone have a slightly different appearance to different people. Or a piece of music, for example, can sound like the most beautiful thing in the world to one person and like a nightmare to another. So there's no right or wrong to any of your responses to the invitations that I bring to each session. And it's worth saying also that everything that I say is just that. It is an invitation, and often I will use that word to remind you that you have a choice constantly, whether you follow that invitation, whether you explore that suggestion or not. It might be that throughout many practices, your body wants to do something completely different. And in this case, I encourage you to follow that as fully as possible. And of course, at the same time, if you feel that curiosity for moving towards your edges of a certain type of movement or a certain exploration of awareness or energy, then again, feel free to follow that. So really, this is a practice of life. It's not a static practice that is going to look the same every time. It's not like a hatha yoga class that has set gestures or set positions, even though we will be going through a sort of progression through each of the videos. However, and I'm sure this is also true of a hatha class, where our bodies might respond very differently from time to time that we actually practice. So openness, curiosity, softening, and inviting in sensation as a guide are the main anchor points that I like to bring into my practice, or go into each practice having them loosely anchored as I move through it. Of course, if you feel like you need extra support during any of the practices or anything like this, you can always give yourself that. Have some cushions, a blanket, anything that you might need to make yourself as comfortable as possible. So welcome once again, and I'll see you in one of the following videos.